Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Super excited to be here. Honestly, always when you get these type of questions, can you stand up and actually talk about a certain topic? You get very modest and like, do I actually have a lot to say about this specific topic? And then what I'm actually going to try to share is basically what I have done that has been successful and some of the parts that has not been as successful, and also framing it into the data democratization type of journey that I've done the past couple of years at EQT. So, start off, who am I? My name is Pedram Birounvand, been working at EQT for the last 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was working at Spotify and worked as the head of the BI team back there. And what I've been doing is basically heading the different type of data initiatives across different type of domains, everything from financial system to CRM system and things like that. And prior to that, I also worked as a consultant, so I've been also exposed to a lot of different industries. So these are the different type of experience that I had, and consolidated all of them into my latest mission here at EQT. And what is EQT? EQT is a private equity company, and that might be a bit new terminology for some of you, but basically what we do is that we invest in awesome companies. And what we do, we inject ourselves into them by introducing really good industrial advisors and also help out with financing for new initiatives. And throughout the time, the holding period between 5 to 10 years, we try to make sure that the company becomes even more awesome and that they are very sustainable, both from a revenue perspective, but also from its footprint in the society and the world. And after the 10th year of holding period, hopefully we make a profit by finding a new good home for that portfolio company and make sure that the new owner has the same mission and mindset that we do. So that is basically EQT. And what are we doing within EQT in regards to data democratization? To use the tech terminology, eat your own dog food, I truly believe that we managed to democratize data at EQT. Here is me taking two pictures in two very important sessions. One of them, on the picture on the left side, is the Global Investment Forum. That is our chairman actually sitting and looking in a live Power BI dashboard fed directly from our database environment, Snowflake. And they go into this Global Investment Forum and they build the entire story based on live data in the meeting. So when they want to actually drill down, they click and drill down and have conversations. And this is together with some of our absolute heads within our private equity industry. The second picture is our ExCom. That is our leadership committee within the organization. That's our CFO, our CEO, our chief legal officer. And they're also looking at a live financial statement shown in Power BI dashboard. So again, they don't have to prepare any single slide or PDFs when they go into a session. They build a story surrounding the data in the session, and that is amazing. And how did we actually manage to achieve this? Because this is an adoption that I've never managed to do throughout my entire career as a data expert. And I'm going to come into that in the next slide. So what type of strategy did we use to manage to get to this level of adoption? Historically, doing data initiatives is very often that you do very long assessments. You go into a company, you look at what are their strategical objectives, what type of KPIs do they want to look at, and then you start assessing the source systems, you build up a bus matrix. But what we have seen again and again, by doing these type of projects, very often they fail because the closeness to the customer is not really there, and these type of assessment projects usually take so long of a time so that the assessment that you've done is not really relevant anymore when you're done with the assessment. So instead we use a very simple strategy of just looking at super frustrated users within the organization. Like, these are the top executives in the organization that sits very close to the CEO. The different C-level executives have usually an MBA degree and are very senior within the organization, but they're doing super boring job. What are they doing? They're copy and pasting stuff in Excel. That's the only thing that they're doing. And that was not what they envisioned themselves when they were growing up. Like, I'm going to copy and paste Excel in my career. That's really not that fun. So you have to find these people that are super frustrated and tell them, we're going to help you out. There is a thing called technology that can automate the copy and pasting that you're doing every single day. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want so much help, but I never get any budget for doing this type of stuff. And you say, that's fine. I have like the board, I have everyone with me, so let's actually try to help you out. And then you start really iterative process. And here is very important. Don't be afraid of taking shortcuts, because what often happens when you get classical data dudes like myself, we start thinking about all the different things that can go wrong. You start with the Kimball model, the Inman model, all of those type of things, but forget about that. What is important is that you get really good iterative work so you can fail fast and learn from your mistakes and get to a really good, awesome solution. The next level is to getting the super happy customer. Because what are you getting by getting the happy customer? You're getting an ally in your data journey. You're getting strong endorsement from someone that has direct access to the CEO or the CEO. That's not very easy as a tech dude, being able to do that. But this is a very simple technique that a lot of the marketing companies is using nowadays. Instead of focusing on big TV commercials, you focus on existing customers that are maybe a little bit frustrated. You give them some extra care. You start measuring the NPS score, and you manage to make them more a liaison for your mission. And that's exactly what I've done here. And that's why I have this high of an adoption. So, but getting to the little bit more geeky parts of it all, like being able to be iterative in your strategy really requires you to have good technology. And that's something that I truly believe that we managed to do at EQT. So the technology that we're using is Fivetran for building or buying data pipeline as a service, because coming from a company that built all of the data pipeline themselves, I know how difficult it is to keeping up to speed with all the API versions, all the changes in the source systems, and we really want to avoid that. So we're buying it as a service. It's a plug-and-play functionality. You pick your source system, and it dumps all of your data inside Snowflake. Amazing. But there are some custom-built applications that you probably are hosting in-house. What we're doing there, Fivetran provides you an opportunity to use cloud functions. So for that specific use case, we actually use Python code for being able to extract data and dump it into our data warehouse. But the important thing, we do no transformation here at all. We use traditional, not traditional, the new modern ELT type of process instead of ETL. The next level is the persistent layer. And what is the persistent layer? That's our lake. So we're dumping all of the data into our lake. And that is basically, it's not schemaless. It is data with schema. Sometimes it's without any schema because it could be JSON. But in essence, because we don't have, and again, I do have a couple of old colleagues here from Spotify. So the amounts of data that I'm using here is not the Spotify data. It's not petabytes. It's transactional systems. It's financial systems. So the biggest tables that we do have is 100 million transactions. That's nothing for a database engine such as Snowflake. So what we are doing here, we're persisting data only in the lake. But for all other steps in the transformation layer, we're just building views. So it's views on top of views on top of views. And then we're building data products based on views. Why is this important? Because we can do remodeling of the data model in a very simple way. So we can change the data model sprint by sprint without actually needing to take into account for the big data migration between the different environments or the new tables versus the old table. And that is very important to be able to be agile in your iterative work very closely with the business. And we build data products. What do I mean with data products? Instead, previously, when you build the traditional Inman architecture where you had a centralized, normalized database, where everything was based on that, we're instead thinking about the different slices we want to do in the data, and basically we're building teams surrounding those different data products. So it's small teams of 3 people, 4 people, sometimes 5, focusing on a certain data domain, and they build their own marts. They're fully responsible for that. And this has proven to be super agile and successful, and they know their customers. They really, really know their customers and understand their pains. So this is the architecture. But now I'm really bragging. But it's, in essence, to be honest, no, this is not foolproof. This is not foolproof. No architectural model is foolproof, and this contains a lot of errors as well. And one of them we actually noticed in the past half year really, really extensively. And that is this problem. All of a sudden, you want to start sharing your KPIs across your different data products. Whoa, that's a big problem. Because when you have small agile teams, what they're going to try to do is not look through like how are other teams building it. They're just focused on their customers. So they want to be very service-minded and build stuff fast. So what they do, they very often re-engineer an existing metric that maybe already exists in another application or another data product. And very often you get to a point where you have discrepancies. And then I have a very, very embarrassing conversation with the CEO or some other executive showing me 2 reports that should show the same number, but showing 2 different numbers. That is very, very embarrassing, having those conversations. Aren't you the head of data? Shouldn't you solve these problems? Yes, sir, definitely, I'm going to do that. So I changed my role to head of data management instead, and then all this problem was solved. No, but in essence, I started building an additional strategy here. So building a data management culture, it really requires you to actually work much closer to the business in regards of the different type of objectives. So the new objectives that I said here is for the new ways of working is clear accountability, clear quality, and sense of urgency. And what do I mean with that? On the business side, we need to make sure that we have proper data owners. The data owner should not be within tech. It should sit on the business side. Secondly, we need to make sure that the data owner understands their obligations. What are they testing? What do they have to test? And how often do they have to test their data? And what is the definition of what they're owning? And this is something that I'm super proud of and happy about, that we have started a very good collaboration together with Colibra to helping us in this data journey. I'm going to tell you all about that a little bit later. And lastly, when we start actually figuring out who's the consumer and who's the producer, and start really documenting that properly, we actually get to a point where we can actually start establishing proper service level objectives. So if somebody shouts and says, I have problem with this data quality, how quickly should we respond? If you don't know who the consumer is and what they're using the data for, it's very difficult. Very often you do nothing because you don't really understand it. But if you understand this is for the annual report, we cannot be delayed with this, then we have to promptly respond and give them a service level of, say, a couple of hours. So that's the sense of urgency perspective, to be able to document the end-to-end lineage and understand who is the consumer, who is the producer of data. I've mentioned this, so in order to solve the previous problem, we're applying a very old technique that unfortunately have been lost to the modern society. There is a thing called documentation, guys. Let's go back to something that actually works. So let's actually start documenting what data we do have and what are they used for and who's the owner for that. And for that specific purpose, apologies, I know that I have a couple of Colibra colleagues in the room, but Colibra is actually just documentation on steroids. That's basically how I'm seeing it, but it's fantastic. Finally, we get documentation on steroids where I can actually search and find what data we do have within our organization, who is the consumers, and what controls do we have on all the different data points. And then instead, now next time, when a team decides we're going to try to build something, they actually first go into the data catalog, look, do we already have this metric? Do I really need to rebuild it, or can I just reuse an existing metric that we already do have? And that is fantastic, and the only thing that we have actually done is proper documentation and made the documentation searchable as well. And that is, in a little bit more sexy term nowadays, called data catalog. It's not called documentation, so the youngster will probably like to do it a little bit more. So this is the essence of what we're trying to do, and we have had a lot of success with this. And while you're doing documentation, all of a sudden you start to find other type of synergies that you can actually start using. And those synergies are fantastic within the new Snowflake environment because, for example, we have some functionality for being able to mask data. And this is super important when you're working with GDPR. We do have a lot of sensitive data about our investors that we don't want to leak out to everybody internally or externally, so we can actually start masking our data. And that is amazing. And we can also tell the data owners to specify these type of tags. What is PII data within our database? Can you please tag that? And they will do that, and then we can solve that problem. Secondly, I mentioned tags. This is also a very awesome functionality within Snowflake that we can actually start tagging what is PII data. PII stands for personal identifier information, but we can also start tagging such as confidential information, sensitive information. And then later, what we can do later on that is super cool, we can actually see who has accessed the sensitive data or confidential data. So when an auditor comes in and says, who has access to your sensitive data within your organization? They can be insider information. We can do a very simple query and get that information out straight away. And then the auditor is going to be super happy, and my CFO is going to say, good job, Pedram, you're amazing. And that is super cool. I don't think, did I mention row-level access security? So there is one more feature that I want to mention within Snowflake that I really like. That is the access management part. So you can both manage access both on the row level, but also on the column level. So going back again in regards of data democratization, so now we've created a data catalog that enables people to find data, see the controls, who is the owner, can I really trust this report or can I not trust this report? All of these things are now documented in a centralized repository, and all of this has also been enabled through Snowflake, where we can also use the technology for tagging and making the data available. So you need to have all of these technologies actually in order to actually fulfill the democratization fully, and also getting the C-level buy-in. Thank you so much, everyone. That was everything that I had to say so far.